Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome in again to another edition of the Voice of Camp Nathanael, coming to you from right here on the campus of Camp Nathanael in Emelina, Kentucky. Stephen Bell, and with me is
Lee Sharp.
Man, you know, I just realized in our last episode we didn't introduce ourselves.
We did. Whoops.
We didn't. So there was. By this time, surely everybody knows who we are. But
we're in the show notes and stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Surely, I never look at our show notes. That's Cameron's job.
Cameron, we appreciate you, Cameron.
Yes, Cameron, we do very much. Hey, before we get into talk, because we got a special episode today. We're going to be hearing about just something that's just a real kind of a personal story from you, and so we're going to get to that in just a second. Before we do, though, we're going to switch gears because this is technically our Easter Resurrection Sunday episode.
Yes,
because
it's a little bit early right now.
We know a couple of weeks out.
We know that Easter's coming soon, but we're getting ready for Easter.
That's right. But what we wanted to do, instead of taking time at the end of the show to talk about what's going on at camp, we wanted to bring it up right now because of how kind of pressing it is right now. We are in the middle, actually, we're more toward the end now of our Kickstart Soccer registration here at Camp Nathanael. And so if you're wondering what Kickstart Soccer is, basically, if you've got a child who is 3 years old by April 1st, all the way up to those who are currently in the 8th grade, and they want to play soccer, then they can play here at Camp Nathanael. It's a really, really awesome program. We're talking like upwards of like 200 kids that get involved in our soccer program every year. And it runs from the beginning of April until about mid-May. And it's just an awesome opportunity for you and your family to come here on campus on a Saturday. Throughout the week they have practices, but on Saturdays they'll have their games, and they can be they can find out more about what camp's about, how you as a family or your kids can get involved in camp over the summer and the various other programs that we do all year. But if you want to register, here's what you do. You got 5 days left to register. Registration ends on the 20th. So just in 5 days, you've got to be registered by then. You can register at campnathanael.org/Kickstart. All right. campnathanael.org/Kickstart. And make sure that you get on there, you fill out all of that information. And you know what the amazing thing is? When we started this program, about like close to 10 years ago, it's been going on that long. When we started the program, I've had a lot of kids for a long time. And all my kids wanted to play soccer. And so I was like, hey, we're the ones starting this program, so you know what we can do? We can set the fee. And the fee is not $25 per child, unless you have one child. In that case, I apologize. But if you have multiple children, like I do, I have 6. You have a lot of children.
I have 4.
Yeah. All of your kids, the entire family, at least the kids part, ages 3 up to 8th grade, can play soccer for a total cost of $25. It's $25 per household.
Which is pretty great.
That's pretty good stuff, man. Yes, indeed.
And the commitment there, I mean, you're doing one night a week doing practice.
Yep.
You've got some games on Saturday, so it's not like a huge time commitment.
It's not a huge commitment, man.
Then,
it's not.
It's a lot of fun. There's kids. My kids have played. I have younger kids, so they're now 5. They're both 5 now. And so they'll be running around in the field, kicking the ball around. I think we do T-shirts. So,
we do T-shirts.
So you'll get a shirt out of this. You get to play a lot of soccer, have a lot of fun. Might get a trophy in the end, all the good stuff.
We say might a lot too, depending on how the season goes. One of the big things is as long as we get enough coaches in, we'll have, all divisions, because if for some reason, I do want to use this here to make everybody aware, if for some reason we don't have enough coaches for teams, unfortunately we have to start with the younger age groups, not being able to have those because you can't take away your older age groups because some of those kids, this may be their last year to play. So as long as we have enough coaches, Lord willing, everybody, it's all going to work out great.
That's another plug there. You haven't mentioned it yet, but if you love soccer, and you're an adult and you love soccer and you want to work with kids, we've got a volunteer application.
We've got a volunteer application.
You can fill out. It does a basic background check, all that sort of good stuff there, so that all of our coaches are cleared and good and out with all that sort of stuff. But if you love soccer and you want to get involved, you can volunteer.
Absolutely. Let us know, man. Be great. All right, so we're going to switch gears and get right into it. We actually have a guest in here with us this morning that has already sat through everything we've just said, and it's someone that you know fairly well.
It's my wife.
It's your wife. Hi, Tess.
Hello.
So we're going to adjust a mic. You might hear an awful noise.
So, that's all right. That's all right. So Tess Sharp is in here with myself and Lee Sharp, her husband, and we've got you guys in here because we want to take an opportunity. Again, we're talking about in a different way. We're talking about Resurrection Sunday coming up. We're talking about Easter, and Lee and I were sitting around earlier and dating back to as we were planning this out. What could we talk about? And we talked about, of course, the resurrection last year. Yeah. But then you started sharing with me, Lee, just kind of a personal story about what really goes on in your life every time Easter comes around.
I questioned whether I should share the story or not.
He did.
There was a debate there in my own head of like, is this one of those things that you? I don't know. It's one of those things you're like, do you keep that to yourself, or do you potentially share this story? Maybe it encourages other people. I really don't know. So
and after you shared it with me, there was no doubt in my mind at that point that this really could be an encouragement to other people, and if you're cool with sharing it, I think people need to hear it. So, man, we
can jump in. Yeah.
We're gonna jump in because I don't know. I don't have a list of questions to kind of set this up because. Man, it's what God has done in your all's life at this particular time of year, and this dates back to
2017.
So right after you guys got married, right?
It goes back farther than that.
Goes back farther than that.
That would have been 2014.
Okay.
Is the year we got married. So we're actually getting ready to come up on 10 years now.
Wow. Good job, guys. Way to go.
Milestones and all that good stuff.
Hey, and for the record, let us go ahead and let everybody know that's listening. This is not what we would normally do as like a missionary highlight episode. That's not what this is.
No, this is just a story that when you listen to it, it'll make a lot more sense.
Right. We'll bring Tess and Lee back in here in regards to a missionary highlight in the future, but we just wanted to share this with you because of the significance that occurs around this time of year.
Ties into Easter.
All right, man.
So we're talking about our Easter episode, and this is, I guess, a set of stories that whenever Easter comes around now, this event that we're going to be talking about here, it started all the way back in 2014. It led up to kind of I guess the big part of it was in 2017, and now every Easter, this is what's going through my head. And so 2014, we got married. My wife is nodding her head over there.
Is that correct, Tess?
Yes, that's correct.
we actually got married here at camp.
I remember that.
I
was videoing your wedding.
You were videoing the wedding.
See, look at this, man.
Currently now, if you want to go to the place where we got married, there's a handcraft building that we plopped down on top of that area there. So I guess nobody else can have that spot.
I guess not.
We've claimed it. But the way this story plays out and the way it ties into Easter and whatnot, it'll all come together in the end. But it was 2014. We had just gotten married, and we moved up to Lexington. We were getting started in jobs and all that sort of good stuff. And me and Tess, we had talked about, talking about families and wanting to grow families and whatnot. I think you were going to jump in with some.
Yeah, well, before we got married, I'd always thought about becoming a foster parent growing up. And my first introduction to being a foster parent was actually a extended family member, and they were actually fostering to adopt special needs kids and adults, and so they had a huge family. We would always go visit them every year, and we just got to see all their kids and interact, and it was just a really cool. But that was kind of like, if that's foster care, that's not for me. You know, that's a big. You have to be a special person to do that. That's not something that I could do. And then, as I got older, I got talking to Kimmy Sparkman, then Kimmy Van Dyke, and she got to share a little bit about her family story with her family being a foster family when she was growing up.
Funny thing, not to interrupt you, but
no, go for it.
I got a message from Kimmy last night about another friend that she has who's pursuing fostering to adopt. So it's just funny when you mentioned her, like in this conversation, I was like, well, that's pretty cool.
So Kimmy was my counselor quite a few years, and she introduced me to foster care, and I kind of new to me at that point was, you mean there's kids and babies that you don't have a home and you pick them up and you care for them and you get to be the hands and feet of Jesus, that's something I could do. Yeah. And so growing up, that was like, okay, I want to do that one day. And then that's when we got married, and we had already talked as we were dating. That's something we want to do, but that'll be, in the future. That's not something for now. And so we got married and we started living life. And then we
were in Lexington. We were hanging out, and the conversation got brought up again about fostering, and it was something that you had obviously thought a lot more about than me.
It was something that I kind of had to push us to. Not really push us to. But
that sounds really familiar.
When she mentioned, it was a nice idea, but then all of a sudden when it was like, okay, we're actually going to do it, I was not on board. Mm-hmm. I was not excited about the idea. I was like,
we had just listened to a sermon that was, I can't remember all of it, but it was basically, if you know what you're supposed to be doing and you're not doing it, that's disobedience. Like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so that's when I came home and I'm like, Lee, I think we should be fostering now. We don't need to wait until we have biological children and make it confusing. Like we need to start now. And he's like, I don't know.
I agreed to go to the first class.
Yes, I said, go to the first class. We'll get trained. And if you decide at that point, no, this is not something we need to be doing, we won't do it. So we went to the first class, and you were on board after that.
As a side note, foster care training, it's free.
It is free.
It does take time out of your day, but it does not actually, you don't have to pay for it. So that's just something to throw out there if anybody had a question about that. Because I don't know. I was like, well, yeah. I can sacrifice some time.
And let's chime in here too, because the reality is there are various avenues through which you can go through to foster and adopt. Different organizations, even state.
We were state people.
Yeah, so we did the same. So, yes, there's a lot of training involved. There's a lot of stuff, but again, there are always looking for foster families. They're always looking for people to step up as foster parents. And quite honestly, as the church, as believers, from what we see in Scripture, that is something that we should have. We shouldn't really have to debate very long as to whether or not we should be involved in some way.
In some way, yes.
With foster care and adoption.
This is where my question was. How involved am I getting here?
I'm not saying that every single Christian has to go out and adopt a child. I'm not saying that, because I know some can't do that, and there's various situations where that doesn't apply. But should you be involved in some way? Absolutely. I completely believe that's the case for all believers, that we are to run to the orphan, the fatherless, because God is the father to the fatherless, and he cares for them, and that's where God's heart is. Sorry, I get on that soapbox, and I'm ready to go, so let's kick back up to where we were.
No, you're good. And so we were starting the process. We're going through the training. When it got to the end of training, I was on board at that point. The training convinced me.
It took a long time, too. It was like 9 months before we were actually certified, so kind of like a normal pregnancy.
I was getting ready to say the exact same thing. Yeah,
it was a good long time. And through the years, we've done fostering. We've had multiple kids now come through our house. I think we've had, I'm trying to think now, 5. We've had 5 different children. Wow. One of which has been adopted by us. Jasper, we've mentioned him before. Yeah. He's on our program. So he's, Jasper hanging out with his 2 biological siblings, Piper and Jude. Yep. And then right now, currently, we have 1 little foster baby that's with us.
That's awesome.
And so we are currently a family of 4. Some of the other kids have been able to, they've come and they've stayed with us. They've gone back to be with family members. And that's been, that's been a whole process in itself. Because I know that that's one of the big pushbacks on foster care. Sometimes that's a fear. They're like, oh, but what happens if they come with us and then they have to leave? Well, that is part of the that's part of the deal. Yeah. And through that, we've been able to see, and just speaking for what Christ commands us to do and what he pushes us towards, we've seen some families that he's got children that have gone back to family members. We've seen at least one of our foster children go back to be with their biological family. They completed their case plan like they needed to and did everything the judge needed them to do. And their family got to be restored. And there is something absolutely beautiful about a family getting restored. It is hard in the sense that the child is with you and you've got all these attachments and everything, but that's a good thing. You want to form those attachments.
That's right.
But being able to see a family be put back together it's just something special. And especially when you're going into it with a Christian attitude.
Yeah, I think the longer we do it, I think that's been a bigger part for me, just being able to see that and work with the family. Because I'm usually the one that takes them to the visits and talks to the parents and gets to do that. And I think God has grown that in me, just a love for the birth parents and getting to love on them and show them the love of Christ and being able to minister to them and not just their child.
So you guys, this starts with, you're married, then we got foster care and adoption is being brought in, or foster care is being brought in at the moment into this story. And then we start moving toward, I know a big part of this is in regards to your mom.
To my mom, yes.
That's right.
My mother growing up, I love her. I still love her. I want to say I loved her, but no, I'm like, no, I still love her. Love her. I think we had been married for about a year, and this is where it ties into a lot of these things here, where it ties into Easter and it ties into foster care, and all of these things they all kind of crash into each other,
building
all
up to
the same time.
To the story here. So.
And so we had been married for, I don't know, maybe a month or two. My mom, at that point in her life, she'd been working for years and years. She started to feel a little bit off. She goes to the doctor to go get checked, to go see, hey, why am I feeling so off? She goes to the doctor and she gets that diagnosis that kind of rocks a lot of people's worlds. My mom had cancer. She had ovarian cancer, and they gave her the diagnosis. They let her know all the prospects of everything that she needs to do in order to work on that with chemo and everything. And so Mom, bound and determined as she is to not give up on anything, went in and got the treatments. She did that for a few months there, and then ended up going into remission, which was exciting. The cancer had gone away, and then the cancer came back. And it came back a little bit more aggressive this time. And as time went on, it got to the point to where she knew that her time was getting ready to be up. And I will say it's not the easiest thing for me to talk about, but I will say that during this time that my mom was facing the big questions in life, growing up, my mom always went to church. My whole family had gone to church. It was the same church that my grandparents went to. My mom was there almost all the time. But there was something different that happened during those last few years of her life, to where all of a sudden it wasn't just I need to go to church on Sundays and it's a good thing for my family, to it became everything for her. Jesus became everything for her in those last bits of her life, where she says, listen, to be blunt, she goes, I don't have much time left, and I don't need to be wasting it on things that don't matter. And so she spent a lot of time hanging out with her family. All of a sudden she's going to a lot of different Bible studies. She started a Bible study. She started a Bible study in her house. She got sad that her friends were not in Bible studies, and so she made one for herself. She said, no, awesome. I'm not waiting on somebody else to do this for me. That's great. And so she without any training, without any specialized, she didn't go get a degree, she didn't go to seminary, she didn't do any of these other sorts of things. She just said, me and my friends are going to get together probably more than once a week. She was trying to pack as many people in there. She goes, and we are going to read the Bible together, and we are going to figure this thing out. And this is the way my mother would talk. She was just like, we're just going to figure it out. We don't know how we're going to do it. We don't know all the details of all the different things. And I will say it was a lot of fun, because my mom started asking questions, and she'd start quizzing me because she'd know that I had gone to school to study the Bible. Right. And so all of a sudden we got into some very deep conversations very quickly, that we had touched on the subjects growing up, but now all of a sudden it was for her, it was a matter of life and death. This is not a light issue anymore. This is a big one. And so this is where kind of the story will come to a head here, where the cancer and foster care and what eventually will crash into Easter, all of this happens practically at the same time. So it's 2017. I believe Easter was in April that year. I'd have to go back and look at the dates there. Mom had been getting sicker over time, and so we'll go to work during the day. We'd go visit her in the evenings. We'd go hang out on the weekends. We'd do all that sort of stuff, spending as much time with her as we could. And we were doing all kinds of fun things, reading books, hanging out, watching shows, all the different things with her in the house. And we had gone over there for Easter weekend. And on Easter weekend, it seemed like any of the other weekends that we had gone to go hang out. But that Saturday morning, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, we'd been taking shifts hanging out with Mom because we just wanted to spend as much time with her as we could. Saturday morning, my mom passed away. And the day in between Good Friday and Easter. And I guess the best way to say it is that Easter has a whole deeper meaning now. And it's not that it because of the timing and all the different, it just so happened to be all at this time here.
Yeah.
And so the idea in talking about Jesus, in that one day Jesus is going to return and the resurrection of the dead, and there is going to be this great time when Jesus is going to bring all of his people back together. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get to see my mom again.
That's right.
And I'm
That's right.
really like that. Just sorry, I'm taking a second here.
No, dude.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Being able to see her. And though that sounds a bit chaotic and a bit crazy, because inevitably what happens is mom passes away on Saturday. When it gets to Easter Sunday, I grew up in a small town up in Paris, Kentucky. We knew the funeral director. He was friends with him. He came over that Saturday. He took care of all the different things there. But nobody's working on Easter Sunday.
Right.
So we went to church on Sunday. And then that Monday, we go into the funeral home. We're talking with our friend, and we're figuring out all the details of everything that you need to do that goes into a funeral. Turns out there's a lot of details that go into that. Funeral directors. I got a little small shout out to funeral directors there. Y'all have some hard jobs.
I would not want that job at all.
And everybody coming into you is in a little bit of distress. Like
every single time.
You all are, it's really impressive what you all do. And so we're figuring out all the details of that. And then we decide, okay, so on Tuesday, we're going to have the visitation and all that sort of good stuff. All the family will be able to come in. We're going to have it at First Baptist up in Paris, Kentucky. That's where I grew up, going to church and everything. And so we made all the decisions there. We were good to go. And we were staying up at my dad's house because that's in Paris. It's close and whatnot. At that time, we were living down in Nicholasville, which is about how far away? I'm trying to think.
45 minutes.
45 minutes, yeah. It's just on the other side of Lexington, but you got to get through.
You've got to get through.
You got to get through Lexington, which just makes everything at least 20 minutes longer.
That's right. Yeah.
So it doesn't seem that far on a map, but you got to make it through the big city
and then at this point, we had been waiting on our first foster placement. We had been certified for 2-3 months at that point.
2 or 3 months at that point. So we've been waiting on our first. Yeah, we hadn't had any. No biological kids, no foster kids yet. We were just a young couple who didn't know much about parenting at that point, hadn't had any experience in that. And Tuesday morning rolls around, we're getting everything set up for the visitation, we're getting ready for the funeral, getting all that sort of good stuff together, and the phone rings.
On the afternoon of the funeral, basically, right?
I guess
it was afternoon. It was like 2 o'clock.
Okay. It was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon there. I thought it was in the morning there, but I guess it was in the afternoon.
Somewhere between 1 and 2, yeah.
1 and 2. The phone rings with a unknown number from Lexington. It's a social worker who is calling to say, hey, we've got this little 1-month-old girl. She's up at UK hospital. She needs some foster parents.
Can you pick her up?
Can you pick her up?
Like right then.
Like right now. We can't wait for you all to sit around and think about it for a really long time. And so I think we looked at each other, and it was one of those split-second decisions. And if this gives you a little bit of clue to my mom and how she operated, I almost imagined in that moment of it's like, but there's all these other things happening, and and mom has passed away, and we got to go to the visitation, and we've got the funeral, and we've got all these other things to be thinking about right now. I know for a fact that my mother would have somehow figured out a way to get the message across of like, you mean you left that baby at the hospital? One of those, what's wrong with you? And so we said yes.
Yeah.
In the middle of just everything being so chaotic and feeling like it's all on fire, we said yes. And we as quickly as we could, drove back to Nicholasville, grabbed the stuff because we were still staying at my dad's house. So we're driving down there to go grab a pack and play and diapers, and we don't know what we're doing.
Right,
We've not been parents before.
What do you need for a 1-month-old?
What do you need for a 1-month-old baby? I'm like, I don't know. They're little and they need diapers and clothes and a place to sleep. And
okay, that's good. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. We'll figure the rest out later. And so we
grab a bottle and a diaper. Let's go. That's it.
That was 2:00. So we get down there. It's about 3:00. We're heading back up. They let us know, hey, the little girl, she's ready. You can pick her up at the UK hospital. So we go to UK hospital and we get in there. And of course, we got to fill out the paperwork and we got to do all the.
It took longer than we were expecting.
It took a little bit longer. While all this is coming, we have the countdown for it. We're supposed to be heading to mom's visitation, which is starting at 6:00, and then family is supposed to get there about 4.
We didn't make it at 4.
We did not make it on time. So all of that to say, we got her. We got her in her back seat. Again, we don't really know what we're doing. We're just figuring it out.
She screamed the whole way.
She screams all the way to Paris, which took about an hour at that point because it is now 5:00 in Lexington. And if you've ever had the pleasure of driving through Lexington, Kentucky at 5:00 on a Tuesday
from UK downtown,
it's a nightmare and a half. Wow. And you have a screaming baby in the back, and you don't know what you're doing.
Not a clue.
And you're late.
And you're late to your
mother's visitation.
Yeah, just everything everything was. There was lots of yelling and just everything's gonna stop. We show up to the visitation, and I remember your sister came. She was there at the visitation.
We had called her beforehand and said, we are going to bring a baby and we need you to take care of her. We know nothing about it, but we cannot do it tonight. we are busy.
We walk into the church. We pass our little 1-month-old baby that we got an hour before to your sister, and she goes, what am I supposed to do? And we go, you know as much as I do right now.
Wait a minute, how old was Jackie at the time then?
I mean, probably 22.
Okay, so she had no experience either. So
said, you know as much as we do at this moment. I quickly ran into the church bathroom, changed, and
I could just imagine handing the baby over here. You know as much as we do at this moment. You can't do anywhere. So
I know she's screaming. We're like, maybe she's hungry. I don't know.
Oh man.
And this is our introduction to foster care.
Yep.
We're not making a good case for other people that.
Hey, man. It is what it is. So man, you're surrounded by these circumstances that really, it's all of these circumstances that circle around all these personal experiences that circle around, and in the middle of all of it is the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And then when we look at things like death, and even when we look at things like foster care, which are glorious in what we get to do, but it's the result of brokenness.
It's messy.
It's messy. So surrounded by brokenness, we have the glorious truth of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That one day, because of the promises that we have in Scripture, all brokenness will be done away with. All death is gone. All broken families it's over because of the resurrected Christ. So, first of all, thanks for being vulnerable enough to share that. Because the reality is, if you're listening to this, every single one of us have these things in common. It may not be, foster care may not be what we have in common if you're listening to this. Some of you may be so, But what we all have in common is the fact that we live in a broken world, and that the remedy for that brokenness, the answer to that brokenness, that which restores and redeems our brokenness, is the message of the gospel, the truth of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, which we celebrate in just a couple of weeks as we meet together as the body. So I want to encourage you, if you're listening to this, man, if you don't go to church anywhere, go somewhere and celebrate what Christ has done. It's not hard to find a church somewhere to go and celebrate Christ. If you're here in East Kentucky, contact camp. We're going to put you in touch with a local church. All right. Go somewhere and celebrate with the body of Christ the resurrection and the promise of the resurrection from the dead of all who believe. Guys, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And Tess, thanks for sitting in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And chiming in and being a support for your husband as he kind of goes through this story too. I know that's, listen, man, anytime that we share vulnerable stories, it's hard, but God has allowed us to go through those times so that we might, as Scripture says, He's the God of all comfort, and we are able to comfort each other with the comfort we have received from Christ.
And God is still good.
And He's still good.
In the middle of the chaos and all the things that are happening.
That's right.
He is good through it all. And really, if you take anything out of that story, I pray that that's what you take, is that even in the middle of what might seem like chaos, God was still good to me. God was still good to us. God's still good to our kids. And He continues.
His timing is perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
And He continues to be.
That's right. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us for another edition of the Voice of Camp Nathanael. Enjoy Resurrection Sunday. Enjoy Good Friday. Enjoy these moments to be with the body of Christ as we celebrate our risen Savior. Have a great week, guys, and we'll see you back here the day after Easter.
Yes.
April 1st. Have a good one.